Welcome to Backstage Pass. I'm your host, Mike Shea. Now, some of you may remember my previous podcast series, which was aptly and obviously called the AP Podcast, that I hosted on here for several years. Now, on that show, I spoke to musicians and music industry people and authors and so forth about everything that goes on behind the music and behind all the meet and greets that the fans have always wanted to know about. Now, in this new podcast series, well, it's essentially the same concept, just a different name. We've launched a whole series of other podcasts in the ALTPRESS family, and to continue to call my podcast the AP Podcast would just cause lots of confusion, and we'll just change the name. So, I really do like this new concept behind Backstage Pass because it pretty much sums up the sort of conversations I'll be having on this series. I've always told young music journalists, like, you just got to understand that musicians, artists, performers of any type are just people, and they go through a lot of the same bull crap that we all go through, except obviously they're a little bit more popular than most of us. In a lot of cases, it's probably better that way. So what we're going to do on here is have a series of interviews with pretty much anybody who's in music, and I hope you get to learn a lot out of it, because I don't like doing them unless I learn something about it. And so my first guest is actually some old friends of mine in a band called Miss May I. They're actually fellow Ohio boys, and they go back to about 2009, but as far as their first record, apologies are for the weak. But the band formed in 2007 down in southern Ohio, in Troy, Ohio. And they've been around about 6 albums worth. And they actually just went through, over the past year, a serious change. They actually talk about in our interview about how it was an AP Awards in 2016, where they actually realized how unhappy they were with their current career situation and their trajectory, and they decided it was time to make a whole change. And I found that part really fascinating. They're also going to talk about obsessing over sales stats and comparing your band to other bands, being way overly competitive. And also, they had this nice little thing in here where they talk about that if the fans can extend their arms out, not touch another fan next to them, it's going to be a tough show for the band. I spoke to Levi Benton, the singer, Ryan Neff, on bass and guitars, and also BJ Stead, who's a guitarist. And we spoke just about a few weeks ago. So just for the friends listening, why don't we just go around the table and introduce yourself, so that maybe the people out there that don't know who you are and they don't know your voice.
Yeah. What's up? This is Levi. I'm the singer, Miss May I.
I'm Ryan. I'm the bass player and other singer.
And I'm BJ Stead, and I play guitar.
Cool. All right, that's great. So, you guys have a new album that just came out called Shadows Inside, and you have a new label. You kind of have a whole new team.
Yeah.
The whole thing. And so, we'll kind of go back into kind of how all that happened and stuff like that. But just from being in a band and so forth, how difficult is it for you to kind of psychologically, kind of build up that nerve to kind of make a huge business change like that, especially when you've maybe been with some people for a while?
It's crazy. I think it's terrifying. And I think the funny thing is, since we're adults and we've been doing this for a long time, I think we haven't actually made big decisions like that until the last year, which is crazy because we've been a band for almost 10 years. And within the last years when we actually been like, okay, let's actually make big, scary decisions and not just leave it up to other people. So
you want to know where the decision was made? Actually, was APMAs last year was where we.
It's not my fault.
That's true.
It's not my fault.
Yeah.
Don't want your former team getting hold of it.
No.
That was the day that we were all together, and we were around a bunch of other friends who seemed like they were having a lot more fun than we were and getting along with the people they were working with a lot better. And we'd been given advice from lots of friends who had made the move. Like he said, we were never brave enough to make this kind of move the first 6-7 years of our career.
And I think we just hate confrontation too. I think every band does it, because that's like what you don't think about. You just want to play songs and show up and have a good time. The confrontation business part, you're like, dang it, we got to really deal with this right now.
Yeah.
It's like the last thing.
It is quite the headache on top of touring and all that already. But
yeah.
So were there friends of yours that maybe tried to make some changes and it didn't work out for them? And is that what caused maybe some of the apprehension? Or was it just, we all talk about carpe diem and all this, and let's, just go out every day and make a difference and so forth. But when it really comes down to it, it's like, no, maybe somebody else could do it.
Yeah, I think we just saw that we were the only people in our situation that were not happy. And I think and it was like that for a long time. And we kept coming up with, like I said, we try to avoid confrontation. So we'd come up with excuses or all these like scenarios like, this is why we're not happy. It'll be okay.
Reasons we shouldn't leave, reasons we should
reasons we should stay, all this. And then, I think it just got to a breaking point. Like, and, cause we had conversations for years, and then it just came to breaking points where like, we should make changes. And I think I've never sweated bullets that much. It was terrifying.
Yeah. I think it came down to enjoying this gig as much as we do and doing it as long as we have. We finally decided there's really no reason for us to be as unhappy while doing what we're doing as we were last year. And it just wasn't fun. Actually, it was 2 years ago already because, I mean, we took an entire year off the road. So
yeah, true.
I mean, we were touring. Like you said, we've known you for a decade. We've toured solid for a decade, and for probably the last two of it, when we were kind of miserable. I mean, we were really struggling on the personal end with having made bad business decisions and stuff, because that's the part that really kicks you in the butt, is when all of a sudden you're 5-6 years into your career and you're like, oh shit, this is a business too. We have to pay attention to every penny that comes in. It's not about just writing songs in your living room or your basement, going out and playing them anymore. Not only do you still have to pull all that cool stuff off, but you have to pay attention to the business side of things, because if you run yourself into the ground during all of your off time and the stuff that your fans don't see, then when you come out on tour, you can't deliver the cool production they want. You can't get the right tours you want. And that sort of thing. And we just got tired of struggling, so we just made some changes, and it was tough. But
it took a long time.
It took so long. It took, was it 6? The separation with a former partner was like 6 months. The record cycle, or the record recording, was 6 months. I mean, so between those two things, it took an entire year out of our travel schedule.
And so did you guys feel like, you were going to lose it during that year?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You guys
It was a very long, it was 9 months that we were off the road total.
I forgot I was in a band.
Yeah. We all literally forgot that we were in bands, and then like we would go out, and then people would recognize us, and we'd be like, "Oh I forgot about that thing I've been doing the last 7 years." Yeah.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Yeah, you'd be at like Chipotle, and someone's like, "Yo, can I get a picture of Miss Bay?" I'm like, "What? Oh yeah, well, cool. Yeah, I forgot about Miss Bay."
Oh, my hobby.
I forgot about that. But and that was the thing too. Like what Ryan was saying, it was like it was a really weird feeling to like not enjoy what you love to do, and I think that's when it really came to where we wanted to make a change.
And we were doing really good tours too, but it didn't seem like there was a connection being made where like things were working properly. Like we would do, great merch sales. We were doing huge tours. Warped Tour was great. We were doing like ABR, Parkway, like big tours, really good tours, but it just seemed like something was missing.
Yeah, we'd finish the tour, and there wouldn't. You should finish a tour after working that hard, and it should be like it used to be, like high fives all around. Everyone's so stoked. You want to talk about what you just did after the tour, and it had gotten to the point where everybody was like, nah, you just go to your house after tour, I'll go to my house after tour, and we won't talk about this again until we have to go, because it was just such a...
Behind the scenes was
so full of turmoil that it just made it miserable to be a part of for a year. I mean, that translates into everybody's personal relationships and regular life as well. So it's like, well, you can't really get away with work not going well, because once work goes badly for so long, you start bringing it home with you, and you start stressing outside of especially when you do this and it's 9 months of your year. So you're stressing out 9 months of your year about this, and then there's whopping 3 months you get it home, you come home and you bring the stress with you, and it's not a healthy way to make a difficult job like this last a long time and be fun.
How much of this was also you guys are just getting older?
I think it's a huge part of it.
I agree.
We want to write what we want to write. We want to play with who we want to play with. And we were doing the great tours, and we were I think a lot of it is when we wrote 2 records ago, we wrote a record and it polarized the fan base, and that was the first time we stepped out of our box using different producers, and it's the first time we ever had backlash, and it's like the backlash lit this
was that Deathless or Rise of the Line?
That was Rise of the Line.
Rise of the Line.
And it lit this fire under us where we were like, man, like can really polarize people by doing whatever we want. So I remember when we did Deathless, the whole plan was to have an extremely heavy record that retouched the fan base from Monument, I guess.
And it was perfect setup because it was like, why not release the heaviest record with our original OG producer and then go on Warped Tour? Like, it was like, since we polarized everyone, like Ryan said on the last cycle, on this cycle, let's give everyone exactly what, not even exactly what they want, but above and beyond. And like, that's what we did the whole Deathless cycle. And
now that and then we came into this one with the whole new team. And as they treated us like we're older. I mean, I'm the oldest member. I'm 29. So we're really not that old in the grand scheme of the band world, but we feel like we're 100, 230 years old sometimes.
Yeah, that's true.
So like when we came to this new label and we presented them with the crazy ideas that we had to create the album, we were like, honestly, guys, we just want to do whatever we want to do. We want to have a good time making this one. We want to know when it comes out that we're excited about it and you're excited about it. And it was cool because they were all really on board with our wild, expensive, and difficult ideas.
You know, how much of the sense of competition plays into this? You know, is there ever times you guys were kind of finding yourselves kind of getting stuck in a cycle of like spending too much time monitoring what other bands around your level were doing? Like, wait a minute, they're doing this, and we got to do that. And why did they get that? And
I think we were terrible at that when
we've been
were
told
younger.
that we're bad at that. Actually,
really, as in bad as in it's obsessive or just not caring.
Obsessive. I think it's obsessive.
But we
We're
are very
notorious.
competitive. Yeah, not in the terms where like we would ever want to see ourselves just like smash a band into the ground or do better than them. But when somebody else is doing something really cool and then we ask about it and then we're told no, that's not really your lane or that's not on the table for you, that used to really piss us off, and we would have a really hard time taking that. And when friends would sell more records than you or friends would get a cooler tour than you, as guys who started touring at 18, we had to learn how to be diplomatic about this sort of thing.
And I think it comes with the age thing, like Mike was saying too, is like we've all that like the first record thing never like that's a special time.
Of course.
And that always like and it's funny because even when we toured with like older bands when we were younger, like Bleeding Through and all these legendary bands, they were the same way, and now we're in that position. But like there's always sort of that like sour taste on those bands that have the first release, because it's such a special huge explosion that when you try to compare yourself, and that it'll just drive you insane because you're comparing everything to this band's first record that they're on. It's like, yeah, but you have to always put yourself in your shoes of like, yeah, we were there too when that happened, but
it's relative.
You can't go back. Mm-hmm. It's all relative, and it drives me crazy just thinking about it now. I'm sweating. Yeah. You go in
spin
circles.
in circles. We had this conversation with some friends yesterday who dropped their first record. He said, I accidentally told them their first week. They didn't know.
Oops.
Whoopsies. Sorry.
Whoopsie.
And did you just drop the mic and exit at that point, or would you do?
I wanted to, for
Okay,
sure.
got it.
But I was talking. They knew where they charted, but they didn't know the number. Mm-hmm. And I'm a nerd, and I watch the CD sale numbers like crazy. I read over sound scans every week, like, oh my god,
so
bad
unhealthy.
Do I have to stress out this
unhealthy.
week? And I told them their first week, and I was like, I just want you guys to know that's what Miss May I did on our first week in 2009, technically, because CD sales have dropped by X percentage,
85% since then.
And then I caught myself like in the back of my mind saying like, why did you just say that to them? Like, why did you just find the need to walk up to them and find a comparative comment instead of just being like, congratulations, you guys rule? But I'm like, that's your stupid competitive, been in the industry.
We did buy them a cake though.
We bought them a cake.
Well, okay.
We bought them a cake.
Well, that took care of that.
Congrats.
Yeah. Congrats to our boys in Currents. They're on the same label as us, and that was
Released their first record.
Yeah, they released their first record on our tour, and I had that exact conversation with them yesterday. It's exactly like you were just saying.
You know, there's always something, if you talk to managers and sometimes publicists are always like, yeah, we try and get them to do this, but they're not that kind of band. They just don't do that. If you guys kind of, especially after kind of sorting through all the competition and all that and what you guys are, trying to be competitive with people, are there certain things you guys have just kind of resigned yourselves to is like saying we don't do good at that as a band?
I think
as a business, like,
I think
or
the covers.
social media or
I
something.
think we decided early in our career that covers did not feel right. to
cover
us.
songs.
Yeah, I think
they're
that-
definitely a no-go.
I think the one time, and it brings up what Ryan was saying, where it was a little rough for us. The only time we stepped out of our box because we've always sort of known what we wanted to be, and I think it sort of made sense now after pushing through all these years of like trends that like our genre, like what we've wanted to play makes sense, and like now we're getting a lot more credit than we used to have because we stuck through it. And now like it's weird for metal, it's like backwards. Once you stick through it and make it, then people are like, yeah, at the beginning they're like, we'll see if you go with the hypes. But when we stepped out of on Rise of the Lion, when we stepped out and did stuff that wasn't us, we did the entire record cycle like that, and it's
Yeah, that's
very
very
not
true.
it's very not comfortable, and it's not fun to pretend to be someone else on stage for a whole entire album cycle. That was the hard. I think it's 10,000 times harder to pretend to be someone else than it is to play the biggest show in your life.
I
It's
think
so much harder
I
to not be
think
someone.
everybody would agree that was we had a lot of people in our ear that whole record cycle while we made the record. It was a tension-filled writing process, a tension-filled recording. The touring on that record was amazing, but the I don't know, the look we had and some of the songs we had, they just didn't match up with how we were. And I feel the same way about like we had a cover early on, which got us signed, we had a nice takeoff. That song fizzles out. We might hear 1 or 2 people a night out of 300 or 400 that even know that. Yeah, and that's cool. We appreciate that one. But we did a is it Pop Goes Punk or Punk Goes Pop? We did one of those covers.
Yeah.
Pop.
Never played the thing live. We're just really uncomfortable with the song after we recorded it.
We did it because we were sort of like, hey, do this. You should do
Yeah,
this.
you
And
know.
we're just like, that's not really a band. And it was like one of the things, like you did it, but then it just sucks because then it doesn't get the follow through because at the end, like once you did record the song, we put our foot down like, okay, we did it.
Yeah.
Nobody talked about it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where we finished recording the song, and I don't think I've ever listened to the song all the way through to this day.
And it's
Really.
one
And
of
it's
those
not that it's a
things.
bad song and we don't like
Yeah.
doing that. It's just for our band. It's
just
not
doesn't
us.
work for us.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately, you sort of don't learn until you already did it.
Trial by fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're polarizing your fan base, how fast did you guys know that the fans weren't reacting the way you were?
Instantly.
Tweets, man.
Really? What were they
Tweets,
saying?
YouTube.
The biggest things were like, there was 2 things for that record. The big thing for that record was
Recording quality.
the recording
changed.
quality. The polarized a lot of people because it was old school. And to us as a band and going to old school producer, that's what we wanted.
So for fans out there that maybe aren't technical and
yeah.
so what's old school mean in your way?
All right,
Yes.
so
Oh, you go.
we recorded with
I don't play an instrument, so he'll know a lot better than me.
I love that.
so the new
Singer who's
record.
honest.
Yeah.
Right.
So the new record, BJ will write songs.
Yeah.
Justin will write songs. We'll come in with our producer. We'll rewrite them all together, and then we'll record them all together. Everything is very digitized and modern now. When we went to Terry, Terry did all the Pantera records. Terry did all these amazing records that we as metalheads love. A lot of our young fans might not know those records. So we said, hell with that. We're going to do it anyway. He had just done Sempiternal, which was a massive smash hit. But Bring Me had another really key great writer in their band that we didn't have. And I believe it was Jordan came in and dude is brilliant. And they wrote an amazing record. So we go to Terry. We tried to live write the record. We sat in a room together in a studio in Dayton with live amplifiers and microphones, and we live wrote the amp like everybody always used to. Live amplifiers in the studio. So when I recorded a bass track, there were 2 8x10 cabinets and 600
blasting.
600 watts of power in this studio. When BJ recorded, there
It was like a VH1 behind the scene.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
like an
it
old
was-
school
it was
record.
wild.
but it was
awesome.
all analog, and I didn't put vocal harmonies on any of my singing parts. We didn't want anything that
Everything that
we
people
wanted
like now. We just put
yeah,
on
we
the
wanted a record that could be completely trackless. No matter what, we could walk on stage with 2 guitars, 1 bass, a drum set, and Levi, and we would be good to
Like
go.
how they started recording records.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That
Yeah.
shocked the hell out of our fan base.
They did not
when
like
heard
it at
that.
all.
Yeah.
That was so shocking to them. The songs were in the same tuning. They were in the same tempos. They were the same type of
They were the
riffs.
same guitars.
They were the same guitars.
Yeah.
But when you record the thing completely differently, it sounds completely different. And the fans just really, really didn't like that. But at the same time, we did Mayhem Fest with Avenged Sevenfold and Korn, and we sold 25,000 copies of that record to the Mayhem crowd, who is a second section of our fan base now that we never would have had we not made that record.
Yeah.
So it was really funny because we just really made a lot of the old fans mad, and at the same time, we drew in all these brand new people that never would have listened to us, which is why now we're doing this headlining tour, and we've got promoters telling us, like, you guys have the weirdest fan base. No band has a fan base at your age that goes from this young of an age to this old of an age.
From 13 to 45.
Yeah,
give or take.
we have father-son combos, mother-daughter combos at almost every concert now because we've won the children over at Warped Tour and that stuff, and we won their parents over while we were on tour with like Five Finger and Avenged Sevenfold, and now we're seeing them all come back
That
together.
was the hidden blessing in that record. Was like, granted, that record was hard, but it was a record that needed to happen for our band to get our band where we needed to be. It was just very difficult, and I think we could have done it differently, but you know, like we all said, things happen. Like,
So if you're
live and
going,
learn.
if you're kind of trying to do something different and try and branch out to a different audience, and then you succeed in that audience, but you don't feel like it's you, and you probably have pressure from your teams saying, well, you got to keep climbing or just hang on and just stay where you're at, and you feel like you got to go back to who you were because you don't feel authentic. How do you try and make that bridge without now alienating the audience that just sold 25,000 units for you?
We just had to make sure that the record that we were going to do, which was going to be Deathless, had to be the best thing that we've ever done to please everybody across the board.
The right blend.
So in Miss May I guess caricature terms, what were those things you put back in?
BJ took on huge guitar lead sections in Deathless, which was probably the biggest instrumental change. We had we kind of said on the early records that we would start peppering in a little bit more skill sets each record to kind of change things. And then all of a sudden, once we went in, I think it was with him working with Nick and them already being buddies, it just turned into the guitar sections of the songs exploded on Deathless. It was such a better record than Rise of the Lion on the guitar and on the instrumental end, that when we finally got to the vocal end, Levi and I were just like, well,
yeah, the bar.
No matter what, the bar is.
The skill set bar was definitely raised, and it also really helped that we did all the pre-production with Joey Sturgis, which he ended up doing like all the mixing and mastering and everything. So sonically, it was, you know, the perfect record that we could have done at the time because, one, the skill set was raised higher as far as instruments and all that go, and then sonically,
it matched.
It
what
really
those fans
matched
wanted.
what, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's
I
weird.
think everyone
It's weird
was very
that
happy.
all these things, as we're saying them out loud, sound so tiny, but when we're going through them in the studio,
It makes a huge difference.
if I had hair, it would make it fall out. Like it's so crazy that these little minuscule things are that important. But we did the exact same thing when we went into the studio for this record. We were like, okay, Deathless was a blast. We really loved it. The fan base did actually latch onto it. Now what the hell do we do?
Now we have to do it again.
Yeah, now we got to figure it out, and we got a new team, and we have to figure out how to impress this new team and make sure that.
I think though having the new team really helped us raise the bar again.
Yeah.
Because everyone was refreshed and excited to get out and do it again. You know, so we had a blast doing the last album.
Yeah.
From a performance standpoint, though, you're kind of going from, I guess, Warped Tour kind of tours, and now you're going to be doing Mayhem, you're going to be doing Rock on the Range and things like that. Just from being in front of that audience, we're there for Five Finger Death Punch and Avenged and Slipknot and stuff. How did you guys have to adjust how you performed to the audience, because it's a much more dominated, male-dominated audience with a lot more testosterone. So how did you have to change? Did you almost feel like you were being a stereotype?
He had to carry us. I honestly, he does all the speaking on the mic, and
It was a huge change.
It was a big change for him.
The first tour we did in that world was the first like real rock, like step up tour. What we did was it was an arena tour with 5 Finger Death Punch, and we like jumped right into it.
It's pretty much.
It's terrifying.
Deep end of the pool.
We stuck our toes in on
fire.
Yeah.
We stuck
Literally.
the toes in on the Kill Switch tour, and we've grown up listening to them, so we have a lot of very, Kill Switch inspired parts.
Yeah.
So when we stepped onto that tour, in our minds, we were like, oh boy, like, is this gonna work? I hope it, and it was amazing. It was really easy.
The big crowd performance.
The 5 Finger one was a
Yeah.
whole different
completely.
ballgame.
That's where you really had to learn to sort of adjust, because I can't go on stage and be like, hey, jump, hey, do this, do that, like, because those people aren't there for that. When people come to shows like that, they come to shows to sort of how I go to shows. I just want to watch it and enjoy it, and if I'm close enough in the sort of mess of it, then you get a little rowdy, but that's it. There's no like being forced to do this. There's no like because on Warped Tour it's like circle pit, jump around, do that. Like that doesn't happen in that world. They just want you to play as good as you could possibly play, headbang a little bit, and they just want it to be loud and like
big light show.
Yeah, we
Production
weren't
value.
We're not used to that, and it's funny too, because I had to like change my talks into like we even had like, let me see you put those beers up. Like I would never say that on Warped Tour,
true,
but it's like something.
Yeah, there'd be four dads in the back, holding their beers up, and like the other guys in bands.
It's so different, and the really cool thing is though it's sort of, I think, not I was gonna say this about the team we have now, but I think more when that happened, the best thing that I think it's one of the best things that ever happened to us was doing tours like that, because it sort of raised our inner ceilings within ourselves, because we always had these goals of like wanted to be the cover of AP, we wanted to do main stage Warped Tour, we wanted to do all this, and when you knock all those things out, you're like, okay, that was cool, and you sort of get this stress spot to where you're like, now what? Do we just keep doing this until we like dig ourselves into the grave, or it's like, because then once you get in that sort of like rotation, that's when it gets real scary and the kids start being like, oh, you're here all the time, peace out. So we were stressing, and then we got the opportunity to do those tours, and then you go in with metal bands, even when we do Parkway or like Kill Switch, that are playing the same kind of heavy stuff, and instead of a House of Blues, it's an arena. You're like, wait a second, what we're doing could it go like to another level? And it was just, I literally went from like 24 to 16 again, and I was like, I'm ready to restart and like keep pushing harder. It was so nice to get that second wind.
So when you're out in front of those kind of audiences, those rock audiences, it's kind of like that joke about New York City audiences. Like they just stand there with their arms folded, and they're just like, I've seen this. I've already seen this 100 times every week. So do you guys ever kind of go out and you can tell that there's a tension in the audience, and you feel like it's part of your job to get that out, but you got to work it out of them. Like
I would say
earn it out of them almost.
I think every day on the 5 Finger Tour, it would take at least 2 songs worth of Levi trying to hype the crowd up before they were like, these guys are really good, and then they would start to like mosh and have a good time.
What do you not do in front of a metal crowd as a singer? What do you not do? Because you were saying before, like I couldn't go do this in front of a Warped Tour crowd, so I guess it's kind of obvious. But
for that crowd, well, the things I don't do like I don't ask people to jump. That just doesn't work for that kind of crowd. You don't really. It's weird. There's not more of the talking one-on-one, because that kind of crowd, like I said, they just want to hear the songs the best they could. They don't care. Like on Warped Tour, I can have a speech of how we're so excited to be there. Those tours, right when you start talking like that, you see the arena like staircases. People are getting beers. Like, oh, I have like 30 seconds while he's talking to go get another drink, and I'll be right back. And I'm like, we got to keep this show going, or they're gonna go like.
We're the lesser known act in that world too, so you're striving to keep everyone's attention and win them over. Whereas Warped Tour, we're playing for primarily our own fan base and our friends' fan bases, and it's a lot easier to joke around with them because they know who you are. They might know your personal goofy social media profiles. Yeah. When you're playing in front of an arena full of people, they have no idea. You know what was more difficult than 5 Finger was Bullet for My Valentine in Europe. Yeah. Which we thought, being a giant Bullet for My Valentine inspired band as well, that would have been the easiest tour we could have done. And I remember we played Manchester, Apollo, sold out for over 4,000 people, and we opened this amazing metalcore show. There were 3,995 Bullet for My Valentine fans.
Yeah.
And 5 Miss May I fans. And we played.
It was hard.
We probably sold a decent amount of records at that point. I think we were on At Heart. We were at a pretty decent position in our career in America. And we are playing in front of this 4,000 capacity crowd, and we're getting crickets in between songs. And it's like, at any stage in your career, you can step away from your fan base and step into another headlining band's tour and into their world and just get stomped on. I mean, it doesn't matter who you tour with. You can always accidentally predict wrong and do a tour and have it be really weird. I mean, we did the European festivals like that, and we were terrified the whole time. You know, we're stepping on at noon on main stage at like Download, and we're like, oh boy, like, biggest place we ever played in London at this point is Brixton. There's more people in front of the stage during changeover than you can fit in that entire building right now. There's no way these people know who we are. Yeah. It's noon. It's really early, but we have to go up there and we have to give it a somehow get this going. And what's funny is, like, that one was amazing. Yet the Bullet tour, where we flew in all cocky, like, metalcore tour is going to be great, and then you play the show with Bullet and you're like, they don't like us very much. What's going on?
Yeah, it didn't really help that the entire tour basically sold out on pre-sale before our name was even on the bill.
Yeah, and you run into stuff like that
it was
too.
Bullet for My Valentine with special guests, and already sold out.
Right.
Yeah.
So everyone who came to the show in a Bullet shirt left with another Bullet shirt.
You're literally just an asterisk.
Yeah.
You're in italics.
We're just
at the bottom.
Let me tell you, we were one hell of an asterisk.
Right.
Though.
Yeah. So sociologists, they study crowds. They study how people move and why they make, okay, why do people move through a concert hall the way they do? And they study all that. And, in Starbucks, the story goes is that Starbucks really monitors how people walk in a city, where they walk. And so they find those locations and they pop the Starbucks right there in front of them instead of trying to force them to change it's like a river, right?
Yeah.
Why get the river to change course? Just put it right by the river. So, for you guys, what are some of the things that you see that happen with crowds that are watching you that you guys more or less have to try and, not in a negative way, but you're trying to manipulate the audience to come around to you in a way, because that's what you are. You're an entertainer, so you're cracking the whip. You're saying, pay attention to me, get into it, pump your fist in the air. So what are some of the things you guys notice about crowds? Like you were saying before, like, and then they're walking up the aisles. Like, do you kind of notice, like, okay, if there's a crowd that's stage left in the corner, focus on them and then try and, like, motivate them, like, guilt them into, like, forcing, I don't know what, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, to, like, moving around and stuff.
You're definitely having to deal with that on this tour, because this particular headliner has a lot of different size rooms. And when you change the size of the room, I think sociologists would be interested in this. It seems to us, we make this joke, if you can stand with your arms apart, you're going to have a boring show. Like, the crowd, when they can get that comfortable, they lose they're very shy in that atmosphere. So if we get a big room and we'll be watching like an opening band and the crowd's filing in and you can see that they have space, they'll be so shy, afraid to cheer, afraid to move in close and then we get on stage and as the headlining band, and it doesn't matter if there were holes before, they're like chest back, going crazy, yelling, screaming. And it's funny, when we play a show, he has the ability to, I can't do it. I said 2 syllables into the mic last night. This is the first time I've talked in probably like 4 years. He can take a crowd that doesn't want to be at the concert that they bought a ticket to, and somehow he can brighten them up, and he's been doing a great job of it this tour, especially like the how have you been doing it when we go on at like 10,
that's what I was going to
40.
say. I think the biggest hard thing when you were saying, what do we notice, like when, with the arena thing, seeing people go up the stairs, the biggest thing now, because we haven't headlined in like 5 years. So the biggest thing that I haven't been, it's not that we're dealing with, that I haven't been sort of accustomed to because we haven't headlined in such a long time, was the fact that we are playing late. So I have to make sure, since we are playing so late, that like I don't do anything that's remotely boring or brings down the energy, because that's right when I'm on stage and I could see people give their friends hugs, like, I'll see you tomorrow, and I'm like, no. I'm like,
We're not done.
I just said, I just went to get a drink of water. I'm like, chill out. The show is like, so that's one thing we're learning now, to where it's like it sort of sucks to keep it like for us, the energy 110% the whole time through, to like just go, but you sort of have to do that, or we're learning even more and more that we have to do that, like, because some people, like when we were practicing, it's like, oh well, can we do this for like a tuning break and do that, and it's like, dude, if we give them any ounce of like turn down, they're gonna peace out, because we have a drum solo at 10:45 happening, and then we get off stage at 11. We're like, dude, we still have a lot more show to go. So that, I think that's one of the big things we're adapting to right now. But it always changes, and I think that's something I get better at as a front man to learn over the years, is to sort of be at like damage control when that starts happening, because that's like everyone else is rocking out, looking at their instrument, making sure they're playing perfect, and I'm up there trying to play perfect, and then I start stressing seeing that stuff, and they're obviously not seeing it, so I gotta be like, okay, I gotta fix this before the show's over, because it's like something's going down right now. So I think you get better at that over time too, because back in the day there used to be a lot of uhs and likes on the mic, like wait, don't, hold on guys, wait, and now I gotta make it sound a lot cooler than I used to.
Is there certain things that you guys individually, like little idiosyncrasies or behaviors on stage over the years, that you've tried to kick, and that God, why did I do that again? Like I hate when I do that move, or I hate when I do it. Anything like that?
Oh yeah.
We invented a thing years ago.
Yeah, sort of.
It started out as the jellyfish. Justin was doing it in like 07, 08, and it turned into that the body bang thing. And then every band from our genre did it for a few years. You're welcome.
The synced body thing.
Yeah, the synced body thing was ours. We were doing that locally. We were inspired by like a lot of our friends from the local days. Like, we were touring with like, or playing shows at Gwen Stacy and Once Nothing, and a lot of our Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana kind of friends. And we were all Devil Wears Prada. We all came from that we all created our stage look from all the bands we were touring with at that time. And I remember we definitely had a group discussion like, boys, it's time to retire that particular move.
I think what I do every night on this tour, that I find myself, I get like so amped up, and I'll jump on parts that aren't like, that nobody else
you
is
just look like you're just hopping.
Yeah, so like everyone is like jamming out and headbanging, like bands like doing their thing, and I'm just like
super stoked,
and I'm just jumping by myself, the only person in the venue. I'm like, why? Like, while I'm in midair, I'm like, why am I doing this? No one else hears this part, and I'm like, stop. And I'm like, take a breath.
The audience is just like, whatever he's on, I want.
Yeah, exactly.
There's some times where we'll be just like jamming out or whatever, and then I'll be like tapping my foot on the ground, and I'm like, I probably look like I'm playing in a country band right now.
I thought the same thing last night.
I should probably do something else. I'm just having fun, so I'm like, yeah, this is great. Stomping my feet, and then I'm like, I look like an idiot.
Crap. I had to stop throwing my instruments and diving in the crowd and stuff.
You threw your bass on the ground like 2 days ago.
You did throw your bass.
I got mad and threw my bass on the ground, and every time I do that, I think about my buddy Billy at Fender, and I'm like, Billy, I'm so sorry, dude. I feel bad. So we when we were younger, we went through a lot of instruments and broke a lot of stuff, and we tried to cut that out. We're very
we're adults,
cost effective.
Yeah.
You ever hate your instrument?
Yes. Yeah. That entire 9 months we were off, I was just so not into it. I was so mad at it. Like, all my issues were my bass's fault. And then the second you go back on tour, because you get a job when you're home. When you're off that long, you're working, and you're like, it's your fault, instrument, that I have this new job that I don't want to do. So I'm just not going to pay any attention to you. And then all of a sudden, tour's coming close, and you're like, oh, you pick it up, and you're like, damn, I love this thing.
Yeah.
What's been going on? But I think that just comes with when your hobby becomes your line of work, and what you love to do becomes your line of work, and you do it 9 months a year. Inevitably, you're going to run into that wall eventually, where you're like, I do not want to touch this thing right now.
I don't think I've ever hated my instrument, because even though we were off for such a long time, still had to write an album, and we still had to write a really good album. So I had to make sure that I was
playing every day,
on my chops. But I definitely don't hate it now. I'm having a great time.
Yeah, I think we've been rejuvenated by this.
It's all refreshing. Everything's new.
We started in April. We started touring in April, and we've been out since. And it's been, even though it's tiring, it's like end of June now, but it's been very rejuvenating to go on tour and have a good time again, which has been really nice.
As a musician, what intimidates you?
Oh man.
That's a hard one.
That is a tough one. Yeah. That's a very
I've been
tough one.
thinking that and I think Bleeding Through probably thought this about us, and when Bleeding Through got signed, they probably thought this about whoever was with them. As the technology changes, and it's changing so much faster now, we will bring bands into shows that will bring equipment in as locals that blows my mind, and it's so intimidating because I'm like, we're so busy working every single day that we're not sitting at home getting all this new equipment and learning how to use all these new things all the time. And I'm like, how long is it going to be until I walk into a venue and a 15-year-old knows 10 times more about equipment than I do, just because I'm so busy, like driving 5-6 hours a day, then 6 or 7 hour show day. You get a quick nap in the hotel. Before you know it, you've been on tour for 45 days. You come home and you're like, all right, for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to not think about band music stuff. And then I'm just thinking like one day I'm going to go back on the road and every local band is going to know 10 times more about equipment and technology. And that's going to be a massive benefit to people down the road. It was a massive benefit to us. It's how we got signed, because we knew about the wonders of MySpace and Facebook before a lot of other bands. And
that's what I was going to say. Intimidates me is social media.
Yeah.
It scares the crap out of me.
Yeah, because it changes so fast, and like as we get older, we kind of not really lose interest in social media because we're not allowed to, because that's sort of our lifeblood as entertainers. But it changes so fast that sometimes you just miss something and you're just like, when did that get huge? Like,
Yeah.
And you have to be on the ball to make sure that
So
you're always on that hype train,
And
so you're staying relevant.
It's exhausting.
They put you in this weird mindset. Like I feel weird as like a nearly 30-year-old dude to be worried about whether or not people like a photo of my day. That should not be
That's your job,
something
It's just-
that
it's
but
life.
and it is,
It's-
and
that's
it's like
our job.
we legitimately have to
Just
stress
like
out
that
about
show
this
Black
sort
Mirror.
of thing.
Or, Black Mirror.
That episode of
That's
Black
exactly
Mirror.
what it is. It's insane.
I think that is probably the scariest thing to us is the general technological changes, whether it be crazy equipment with bands having in-ears and click tracks and backtracks and entire records while they're local, and music videos. You can make your own music videos now. We paid a fortune to make
Back
music
in the day,
videos
yeah.
as a local, where we would have to throw our own shows in a VFW hall and secretly keep all the money from the promoter to like have enough money to pay for things like that. Whereas now, with social media and stuff, you can blow your band up before you've ever even played a show.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you guys are, I don't know, maybe more experienced, but maybe you guys can weather more than the newer bands because you did it the, kind of the harder way?
Oh yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's
Or
so as well, yeah.
raw, organic way, in a way you guys
It's-
I feel like we've been through so much that anytime if something bad does happen, we're just like, oh, okay, well,
Guess we got to
course,
tackle
we'll
that
deal with
now.
that. We'll deal
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, I think it definitely is sort of making that not because it's not the whole generation. It's just certain different bands, but it is making those bands not even know like really the outside world until they have their idea of this outside world, but when they jump into the touring and jump into that, I don't think they're going to really be prepared. But we were the same way. But yeah, I think we do have a sort of upper advantage. But like Ryan said, the technology could be so much cooler in the future to where there's that advantage could just be somebody will just come up with something like, don't ever be stressed. It'll be perfect every night.
Is there any band, I don't know, like a U2 or something like that, or Rolling Stones or something like that kind of era back, where you sit there and go like, those guys keep reinventing it, like they just know what to do, but they're ancient. And is anybody you guys admire?
I don't think they're that. I don't think of a band that old, but I think about the bands that started when I was in high school and these guys were in late middle school, like probably all the bands that you know.
You guys are all over 25, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, our high school and middle school was screamo. What's coming back around right now, and I look at bands like, dude, Fall Out Boy is insane. Like you think about Fall Out Boy, you think about 21 Pilots, you think about Paramore, Panic at the Disco. There's so many bands that came out of that era that I was going to like the Newport in Columbus to see. I was going to the Basement in Columbus to see them, in the same clubs that we as a band nowadays are fighting to sell tickets in and working really hard. And you see these bands, and I don't know these people. That's not our world, but we'll do like the APMAs, and you'll run into these people and you'll meet them, and it's like, having not been on tour with them and only seeing them at those shows, you're like, this band is larger than life. This is unbelievable. And then you do like APMAs or something, and you're just rubbing shoulders with them, and you have a conversation with someone. I met Duff at a European festival. I should have been like, I mean, I was losing my mind.
That was a pretty insane.
Dude remembered my name, remembered me when we went to Australia like 6 months later. It's little situations like that when you meet the people, you're like, how do you even have enough time to be as cool as you are? Like,
you're in Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, like you have done so much cool stuff your entire life, all the time, and like you just met me, and for some reason, while we had a glass of water, like you remembered my name. Like, there's so many cool older bands that are like that, and we're still those guys that we're still very like, we're not really afraid to talk to other bands, but when you see acts like that, you're like, man, that's a real rock star.
Actual rock
and
stars,
I think some of that generation is some of the last real rock stars.
Yeah,
that
they're
we're
like
gonna
reinventing music, like you say. Who would you think reinvents music still?
Well, I mean, I think, there are some of the people that are, like, I think any artist that, cynical fans and music press write off, but keeps going.
Yeah.
And shows them wrong to me, is worthy of all the respect in the world. I mean, every time the Stones come out and do something, they're say, "Oh, this is the last one." Those guys are geriatric.
Who else fills
they make
the
all the
Ohio
jokes,
State
they're gonna have
arena?
walkers on stage and everything else like that, but they keep going. And if Mick Jagger walked in a room, everybody would just stop cold. Right? So so the jokes kind of only work in one area of our lives, but when you really kind of come down to it, look at U2. I mean, they haven't been doing so hot over the past couple of years. They're iconic, but this tour they're doing now, they kind of came out and brought it back again, and they re-owned it again. And so it's kind of interesting. So when you guys are, and I'm glad you kind of talked about Duff, because I hear a lot from bands like, "Oh, we were on this tour and then we met that person, and that person's my idol," and so forth. When you're like the fan, but you're a musician, so you're, your coworkers, so to speak, and you meet somebody like that, like, how do you best utilize your time with that person? I mean, do you just kind of sit there and start asking them for advice?
Yeah, you naturally want to
get
punish
stories
them.
out of them, like.
You want to go straight for the jugular. You want to go straight for all those questions you've always wanted.
Tell me everything.
Yeah, going back to Rise of the Lion, we recorded with the guy who did every Pantera record, my favorite White Zombie record, 2 Slipknot records, the best Deftones records. I mean, this dude is the dude. And the first day, since we were paying for it, I got to punish Terry. I got to be like, "Terry, we're going to sit down. We're going to talk about the experience of Astro Creep 2000. We're going to talk about the experience of Cowboys from Hell." And in that situation, it's easy. But when you run into, like you're saying, when I met Duff, I'm not going to just be like, "Hey, man, I have this really cool Jackson, and I designed it off of the Appetite for Destruction record cycle, and that's why my bass looks like." Like, I can't just start a conversation like that. So the European ones are where we usually meet them, and everyone's kind of in the same boat. You're exhausted from traveling, so it's usually catering.
It's like an unwritten book.
Yeah,
you can't pass, like, because my mom does the same thing. I'll call my mom and I'll be like, "Mom, I just saw Steven Tyler and catering." She's like, "Go get a picture, talk to him." I'm like, "You just don't." There's
you can't.
There's a rule that you just can't. Like when you're back here, like she's like, "There's no security or nothing." I'm like, "Yeah, but you just know when you're backstage and you see those people, you just know that it's like you're all on the same level." And because I remember, like, Soundwave was crazy because there's like James Hetfield walking around throwing you the horns, and like Lars being like, "Yo," just walking by, and you're like, what is happening? But you're like, everything inside of you just wants to be like, if I take a selfie with you, it'll be the coolest picture I'll post all year. But I can't ask you for a picture because I gotta play it cool.
Somehow naturally happen, which it never does.
And then you get to talk about it on podcasts like this. Yeah, it did happen.
If I'm being honest, I think when I talked to Duff at Soundwave, I said, "Hey Duff, how are you?" Had a little chat. It was at whatever city had the cell blocks for green rooms.
Yeah.
And he asked where we were from because he knew we were from Ohio from last time I talked. And I said Dayton. And then he just went on for 15 minutes about the history of punk rock in Dayton because, of course, who would be the guy to know? It would be Duff. Mm-hmm. So he just educated me on where I live, and that was great. That was really cool.
That was very cool.
The same thing with Zombie's current bass player, who's been with him for like I've listened to a podcast with him a decade now. He just hit a decade with Rob, and I met him in catering, and I didn't even know I was talking to him. I had an entire conversation with him over coffee, and then he was like, "Oh, well, I'm Rob's bassist. You want to come hang out with me and my tech while we play?" And then I just end up side stage hanging out with Rob Zombie, all because we just had a chat over a coffee about like what kind of jeans work best on stage or some random crap.
It's always the dumbest stuff to talk
always,
to someone like that you look up to about like,
or like even
you talked to that guy, like, yeah, we talked about what coffee was really nice around the venue, and I'm like, why did I like, I waited my whole life to meet this person, and we talked about coffee for like 10 seconds.
Yeah,
like,
we got to talk
it.
about like on Mayhem Festival we had this kid Brendan Donahue. He does photos, and he ended up doing like a bunch of photos for Avenged, and so Avenged ended up seeing him, and they were like, "Oh, those are great." So he actually started doing photos for Avenged on that tour. So since he became friends with them, we would get to like go into M Shadow's personal dressing room and like talk about video games or just like the weirdest, the lamest stuff, but it's still pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's still pretty
and band
sick.
dudes usually don't want to talk about
the band
dude crap.
Yeah.
When you're at the show,
It's unwritten law. You can't bring it up.
Yeah,
because it's just the same crap. Everyone's going through the same thing. It's just like
I wonder
we're
if
on tour.
even big band guys like that were like want to talk about band stuff. Maybe we should just break the rule down so when we all hang out, we can just talk about what we really want to talk about.
Maybe they all really do want to talk about their bands, but nobody asks them because they're afraid. And
it's very possible. So is there like what? Before I forget, this Stevie James, our APTV guy, he's actually out on tour with his metal band, and his tour has taken him from Ohio down the East Coast, and then ends over like in Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana.
We just went through that loop.
And he's like, I have to perform a very different show because he's a frontman. I have to do a very different show in that neck of the woods than I do in Ohio. And is there any sort of things like that with you guys?
Levi.
Like you have to modify if you're in the Northwest versus
Levi had this moment last year. The last tour in America we did 2 tours at the end of the Deathless Cycle to revisit the early Miss May I years. We teamed up with Bless the Fall, who was a tour from our very, very first year of touring in 2009. So we teamed up with them again. And then we did a second tour a couple months later where we teamed up with Memphis, Mayfire, and Venues for the first time, and We Came as Romans, who I don't even know how many damn times we've toured with those fellas. So we did these 2 tours with them, and for some reason, when we played, was it Nashville?
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Sorry, I was
Levi said the F word, and man,
they did not like it.
It turned that crowd so quickly when we were down in the Bible Belt.
Yeah,
it was
it's
very
the tour we're
strange.
on too. So the tour we were on, it was like We Came as Romans, Memphis Mayfire for Today. Very positive.
For Today, definitely.
Yeah. Big Christian following and a big posse following.
So we hit like the quote unquote Bible Belt of the U.S. and I wasn't even thinking, but yeah, like he was saying, you have to adjust yourself. For us, when we do those, like, you got to know what tours you're on too, because the people that are coming out, and right when I dropped, like, and it was like obviously 20 seconds into the show, I dropped an F-bomb, and like I was like, oh,
maybe
and then
5 F-bombs in one
face. Yeah, oh, it was
they
so
just went
bad.
pale, like,
oh yeah,
I'm not buying your T-shirts.
I disappointed the crowd, or a good percentage of the crowd, right off the bat. But yeah, you have to change it. I never see a lot of big changes from different areas in the U.S. as much as I see in different countries and different kind of tours. But because my big thing nowadays is to just keep the energy up. Like, I don't know, it's so weird. I sort of reinvent how I think about shows every single tour. Which I guess is a good thing, because we won't play the same show twice, or same tour twice. But yeah, I always think of something new that I want to sort of bring out. And like right now, I think the big thing for Miss May I is we're just trying to we want to have the most energy and let the show build throughout the show. So how the set is built up, it just keeps building. It's sort of like an EDM show. It's like it just builds to the end, and then it's over. It's just, and you're like pouring sweat, and you're like, that felt like it was 10 minutes, but it was an hour. Like, it's just so chaotic. But that's like where we're at right now as a band, and who knows what we'll do next, but that's like where we're at.
Over touring.
We did it.
Everybody talks about that now, and it's almost like, well, if they would stop eating ice cream, then nobody would get fat. But everybody keeps eating ice cream.
Yeah.
And so it's like one of these discussions that labels and managers and bands and everybody, and promoters and booking agents, everybody blames each other for it and says, well, if that band wouldn't, or those guys, or this
There's always
whole
a finger
scene,
to be pointed.
right? They didn't over tour or whatever, then there'd be more money for everybody, or people wouldn't. Kids, like you said, you guys went away for 9 months, 8 months, and so there must have been even actually. That's very difficult for bands to do that now, especially with social media. So sometimes it's actually positive because your fan base is like, whoa, they're back. I thought they died. So you said you guys went through the over touring thing, and
so we did. We were known. I think we won an award 2 years in a row. It wasn't like an official, like physical award, but I think we won. Yeah, we didn't get any cool trophies for this, but we got an internet award a couple of years in a row from some site for playing the most shows of any band in this particular genre.
Yeah, that chart where they show every.
I mean, we were playing 200 plus shows a year every year for 5 years straight. And we even over toured ourselves in Europe. I mean, we hit Europe 7 times in 2 years. We hit America probably 10 times in 2 years. I mean, we were just aggressively pounding the road.
There's a key to over touring though. There's like you need
the exposure of the right show.
Well, you need the exposure, and you need to just have not even just the fan base, but the team to where you can play around the world strategically to tour nonstop to where you're not overplaying different things. And that's a very hard puzzle to make sense because every band has their own lane. It's not like a equation that you're like, okay, this works for every band. It's so different for every band, but
it's very fluid because bands are doing different things all the time. So especially if you want to try and like team up with a friends band and do like a whole year tour cycle, you got to plan it out.
Good luck. You need 2 years of planning just to get it together.
Because it'll hurt you. Like, the over touring thing, we've been burned by over touring, and then we've also seen the benefits of it because if you do, like right now, we have 5 tours before the end of the year, but it doesn't seem like 5 tours to anyone in the U.S. because they're
not in the U.S.
Yeah, it's strategically placed all around the world to where by the time we come back, they're going to be like, man, we missed you guys. It's like, but it took us a long time to get to that point. You can't just jump off the bat.
I think we were over toured on the Deathless cycle in America. We had a tough tour with Bless the Fall. Numbers were, I mean, they weren't great. They were okay, but then we went on that Memphis Mayfire We Car tour, which was only had 30 to 45 days in between. Hit some of the same markets we hit on Bless the Fall, and we were seeing 1,000 people a night. And it's because the fan base that likes our band was able to look at our website and say, Miss May I in Baltimore on whatever day in March and whatever day in May. Screw that March show. I don't like those bands as much.
Right.
I'm not buying a ticket to that. I'll see you in May. And I think that is where the over touring can really shoot you in the foot.
Yeah.
When you get to when bands
double announce.
Yeah.
I
mean,
it's
very.
And you also have
then the fingers start getting pointed.
Yeah.
Emails start blowing out.
Yeah. And there's so many bands. Like it's not just you.
Yeah.
Using up all of your fans' time, and they're not coming to just your show. I mean, they're going to your show. They're going to Word Alive's show. They're going to Parkway's show. I mean, they're going to all your friends' bands' shows and your show. You're trying to steal a ticket sale away from your best bud in another band.
Did you ever have a confrontation with a friend of yours in another band after some like thing that maybe management or booking agent or clubs did where they stole something, like they did something kind of not sketch, but it was just like, I think you guys competitively somebody elbowed, and then you run into the band later, and they're like, "Why'd you guys fucking do that?"
Oh yeah, you screwed. I don't think we have with a band.
Yeah, last year we had tension with a band we were on tour with, just over space, just because it was two bands of the same size fighting for the crowd, and that's
we never
another
had a touring one.
Yeah, that we've never been the band that's been into it with the individual band members. Like even when minuscule stuff like that goes down, we always try to go one-on-one with the band member of the opposite party that we can fix the problem with, or have the management teams do the lame emailing each other back and forth about petty stuff. But we always try to make sure that when it comes down to the 5 people in the other band, that business is not on the table ever. Like it's so hard to go on tour with somebody you can't stand that the last thing that we want to do is when a situation like that comes up, blow it up before we can get it solved in an admirable way, because you are going to tour with that band again. Doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a full tour.
Paths will be crossed.
Somehow you'll end up in the Ukraine together or something with your green room beside each other.
Yeah.
You know, and you want to make sure that you're working well together the whole time.
Last question I got for you. You know, as you're kind of touring out there and you know, you see it a lot on social media and you talk to your friends in the industry and so forth, so on, and it seems like, you know, just kind of state of the world we're in right now and everything, and everybody's upset. Everybody's upset about something or another.
Yeah.
True.
So what are you kind of sensing, if you were, again, like the sociologists, if they came down and sat down you guys and said, okay, what's the vibe of the country right now that you see when you perform to them? Or are they kind of checking all their problems at the door when they see you?
I think they're checking their problems at the door for our show.
I think that's a really cool thing that we get to do as a metal band. We actually, I was told, this is actually crazy, just that you brought this up, because I was talking to a fan actually last night. She was talking about tour she was going to, and I'm not going to bring the band up, great band, but she was going to go to this other metal show, and I was like, oh yeah, I love those guys. She's like, yeah, a lot of their songs are about like sad breakup stuff, and like they're really like suicidal and depressed. She's like, I don't need that right now. I wanted to come see you guys. And I was sitting there, I'm like, and I've never heard, over all the years of touring, I've never heard that. And I was like, really? I was like, you came like for like an uplifting good night? I was like, I'm like, that makes sense. But I was like, I've never thought of it that way, of like when people come to our shows. But I think it, like awesome. Ryan said, people leave it at the door and like let it, like it's their time to sort, like they wait all year sometimes. There's some people that come see us, they go one show a year. So they wait all year to let it all out that night.
It's only a little pressure on you guys.
No pressure, don't screw it up.
I mean, last night we met this fan who's been tweeting all of us for probably 2 years now. He came around on the Deathless cycle. He is a like 40-some-year-old fuel tanker driver who drives all over the U.S., drives these double fuel tankers, and finally met us last night. And I spent more time hanging out. Was he your
dad's age?
Yeah. I spent more time hanging out with that dude and talking to him about his job and just normal stuff. There was no conversation about politics. Yeah. There was no conversation about foreign policy. There was no conversation about the economy. It was just like, what metal band do you like? I don't particularly like that one, but I like this one. What do you think of that? And that is where...
That's awesome.
A cool thing I heard, too, it was actually from our new manager, was before this record came out, and just in general, since it is such a bad time sort of in the country, and like it just, I feel like it's every time I wake up and get on the news, it's just getting worse and worse. And
it's just something new every day.
Yeah, it's always something. And like he was just telling me that it's sort of really cool, because he was just saying how he's excited to work with us, but he was also saying it's really cool because now that the country's sort of going through this, he's like, it's the best time for people to get into aggressive music, because right now is when everyone is going to be in like the dumps. He's like, and he's been in the game for like 20 or 30 years. So he was like, I remember back when this happened. Like, he's like, it really made it. And it was just cool because I never think about that big of an impact, because to us, it's just songs that we wrote.
Well, you guys now are becoming a messenger.
Yeah. You don't think about that. Yeah.
Right.
And it sort of makes me happy that a lot of that we've always had that sort of positive and sort of upbeat, influential sort of sound and we're still a heavy band, so I'm happy that like that lady last night could come to a heavy show where people are beating the crap out of each other, but it's still a whole positive vibe the whole time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Everyone's there to have fun, so.
Yeah.
And that is the line to end on.
Yeah.
Everyone's there to have fun. Guys, I really appreciate it. This has been awesome.
Likewise.
Best of luck with everything.
We definitely appreciate it, man.
Cool. All right, guys. That's it for this episode of Backstage Pass. Tune in next time. We'll be talking to more musicians about their lives, their music, and everything that goes on behind the scenes. Take care.